All right, guys, welcome back to another episode, Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
And we're on to episode 33, where we get into a little concentration. But the chocolates are good.
Chocolates are good. Those were, So I was out of town.
Yeah.
Last week for Valentine's Day. Like, I actually went out of town on Valentine's Day, and when I got in my truck, I was going to a mastermind event with some friends. You know, Scott, David.
Absolutely.
Which we should have a couple of those guys on for sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, my wife, my lovely wife, these were in the seat in the truck.
Yep.
In the seat next to me. So I didn't eat them all.
With a bouquet of roses, I'm sure. A card. Okay. Yeah. There you go.
I had the flowers delivered the same day.
Yeah.
So they were there when she got home. But I guess when you've been married 26 years, you don't have to be there on Valentine's Day. Yeah. But don't want to miss two in a row, though. So I'll be home.
I flew in Valentine's Day. So I actually was flying in that evening of Valentine's. So I got partial credit there. So, and I did pick up a card on the way to the airport to fly back. So
smart. So today we're talking about, I teased it a little bit in the last episode, the little known 3-step formula for crushing your competition.
I liked your headline a whole lot better than theirs.
Yeah, his was this was one of the few that I actually didn't like. His subhead for this chapter was how to destroy alternate ways for your prospect to satisfy his desire.
Yes.
Yeah, that could be a little, I'm not sure what he means by satisfy his desire.
Right. It's not real specific, but I liked your three ways to crush.
Yeah.
That stood out a whole lot more, for sure.
Plus why you should, I got it written here, plus why you should pull out those old English essays.
Oh gosh, yes.
And I'll explain.
I dumped that one on, I did a mental dump on that one.
So this is all about, this is all about concentration.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Concentration.
What did you get from that?
Well, let me refer to my underlined notes here. What concentration is. This process, concentration, this careful, logical, documented process of proving ineffectual other ways of satisfying your prospect's desire is much more than a mere attack. If you can, lost my place there. If you can only attack another product without showing at the same time by comparison how your product provides what the other lacks, then you're saying nothing at all. So in other words, simply attacking a competitor, without really showing the vice versa, the benefit or how yours differentiates from that one, you're not doing yourself a whole lot of good. You don't want to just simply attack, or you don't. Also, the alternative is just to talk about your product and how great it is without showing a comparison.
Yeah. So like I said, it's a 3-step formula for how to crush your competition.
Yeah, right.
But before we do that, usually right here we would talk about our beer, but
we would.
I guess we should because they didn't listen to the last episode. But
right. So we're still on 1554, which I like New Belgium. I don't know that I'm a huge fan of this one. So
yeah, so we only got through half a glass because it wasn't great.
Right. It's flat. Yeah.
Dry.
So, flat, dry.
Yeah, dry is their term, flat is our term.
Yeah, right.
It's not awful, but it's not great either. No. So it's been slow sipping.
It has been. But New Belgium, be honest, I have nothing but great things to say about New Belgium from some past beers.
But usually their stuff's good.
Yeah, but we won't. I don't think we'll be recommend. This will not appear on our recommended.
We should have like a scale for recommendations from now on.
Yeah.
What would be a persuasive scale, influential scale?
We'll give it 2 hops.
2 hops up. 2 bunnies.
We'll have to think about that. Two bunny hops. That's funny. No, we got to come up with something. We got to come up with our own Persuasion by the Pint scale.
Yeah.
Be thinking about that.
If you got any suggestions, go to the persuasionbythepint.com.
Send us some comments.
So before we get into actually how to do the concentration and the 3 steps, I want to kind of go back and summarize a little bit where we've come from in this book, in case you haven't been with us. But he talks about all these different things that you can do to sell your product or service. One is just to have a superior product. Like just to have a superior product, that's the first thing.
Sure.
Like, and I love this line. He says, if your copy presentation is better than your product, then send it to your client instead of your prospect and tell him to make the product a reality.
Yeah.
I've written for some of those.
That's
those
pretty
people.
good. I like that.
Dude, yeah, I'd love to advertise this for you, but your product sucks.
Yeah, right.
Make it better.
Yep.
And that's true, because I think you mentioned off air, Ogilvy talked about if you really want to break an average product, write a great sales letter for it, and it'll break it. It'll break the whole company, for that matter.
I mentioned that one time. I was on a conference call with two manufacturers who were introducing a product, and they were talking about this needs to be done, website, blah blah blah, and I told them, quite frankly, it was like, and I didn't say their product sucked, but I just said, I used that Ogilvy quote.
Yeah.
And everything went silent. It was like an uncomfortable silence on the conference call. So it was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So we're going to move forward.
People don't want to hear that, but sometimes it's the truth.
Yeah. I mean,
you don't want to put out a lousy product.
Or even a lousy experience.
Right.
Like, even your product be good, but if the buying experience is bad.
Sure.
We've had some problems with links. If the links are broken and you haven't fully tested your whole sales process, that can break your business as fast as anything else. It's like when people get featured on Shark Tank or Tim Ferriss or somewhere, and their server, they're still on their Bluehost plan.
Yeah.
And they get 1 million people going through and
crash.
Yeah, the whole site's gone, and they miss all that opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's a catch-22, because to really have the servers and stuff that maybe, but there's a lot of stuff you could do.
Yeah.
If you know that's coming up. Now, if it's just out of the blue and you didn't know somebody's going to give you that plug, if we were to plug somebody right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to break anybody's business.
Yeah, they would get shut down immediately. So their bandwidth would just go through the roof.
Yeah, lights would dim around the country. Bitcoin would come to a halt.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah. We've seen how that happened.
So then the second thing was you have a better promise.
Yep.
That evokes more desire, a wider promise that gets more people to buy, a more believable promise that brings in the skeptic as well as the people that normally buy. And third is the product role. Like, what role does the product or service fulfill in that person's life? How does it make them feel?
Sure.
Does it make them like a hero? Does it make them feel like a successful person? Whatever it is. Fourth, like to really dial in the response and reaction, which is a lot of what we talked about in the last chapter with mechanization. Like, how do we anticipate the conversation going on in their heads and respond to that?
Right.
And then fifth is what we're talking about today, which is a direct attack. If we've done all that other stuff, or if we just know that the competition is really, really stiff, then we might go with a direct attack against our competition. But if we do that, our goal is to crack the image of the competition, shatter the loyalty of the prospect to that product, and then rechannel the desire back to our product.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he says in here, this is especially useful, this whole idea of concentration, especially where the bulk of your prospects are already customers of the competition, or where you have advertising budget that's much smaller than theirs.
Right.
And so I thought of a company that's done this really well recently in the last couple of years, and that is Dollar Shave Club.
Oh, yeah.
They came on relatively small budget.
Low budget. Like, $5,000 to put together their first YouTube ad or video ad. So
and they went directly at what they do. They went directly after, the razors being locked in a cabinet.
Yeah. Yep.
The razors being super expensive or super fancy, or they went after all the pain points that we've just kind of lived with, and they just went directly at it and said, no, you can just buy razors by the mail.
Yeah.
And, you don't need a 15 blade razor. You can have 1 blade, 2 blade, or 3 blades, or whatever. So they're a great example, probably one of the best examples of the last 4 or 5 years of how to just go directly at the competition. What's cool is they did it with some humor.
They did.
So that it landed, it wasn't like being a bully or a crybaby, whichever way you want to look at it. And they just did a really good job of just going right at them and saying why. So that brings us to, he says, never attack a weakness of your competitor unless you can provide the solution to that weakness at the same time. So like it wouldn't have done much good for, what are the 2 big brands? Gillette and Schick.
Schick. Yeah.
So it wouldn't have done much good for Schick to do that same commercial. Like it wouldn't have made sense.
No.
Because they're doing the same thing.
Right.
They have the same price razors locked in the same cabinet.
Yeah.
It wouldn't
doesn't
have made
make sense. Yeah, exactly. There's not a whole lot to distinguish the two.
Right. And the reason he says this is so important is because your prospect, they know you're biased because they know you're in business and they know you're trying to sell them something.
Sure.
So they know you're biased.
Yeah.
But if you can show them the weakness and show them a better alternative, they'll at least give you a chance to listen. And that's what happened with Dollar Shave Club.
Yep.
And this is funny because this is the formula. This is that 3-step formula to crush your competition. I'll paraphrase it and then I'll take it step by step. So if you can show your customer that this attack is for his own good and his service because your product will eliminate this weakness, then you have a sales story he will accept. So the way we break that down then is the process is this. Number 1, step 1, you point out the weakness of the competition, whatever it is in your industry, whatever it is in your niche. If it's protein powder, you can talk about how they use fillers.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't. And then number 2, you emphasize their disservice to your prospect, right? So if there's fillers, then you're getting all kinds of stuff that it's harming your body.
Right.
It's going to affect your adrenal glands. Like it's going to actually hurt you more than it's helping you. So it's a disservice to the buyer. And then step 3 is prove to him that your product gives him what he wants. So our protein is clean, and therefore it assimilates better in the body, and it gets directly to the parts of the body that the nutrients can immediately start building muscle, right? So that might be a very crude protein commercial there for you. But that's basically the 3 steps.
Yeah.
Point out the weakness, emphasize how it's disservice to your prospect.
Yeah. How they're sliding their customers.
Yeah.
Or
how that customer is not getting what they think
they're paying for. Yeah.
Yeah. And then proving to them that your product then can give them what they want without that other person.
Yeah.
So if you just had those 3 things taped on a wall somewhere in your marketing meeting, because I think everybody has a pretty stout level of competition these days. Like it's hard to be in a niche that you don't have pretty substantial competition. And unless you're just playing, going after the higher end market just from branding standpoint, which you could do, then you're probably going to need this formula if you want to survive and even crush your competition.
We've mentioned in the past the old Mac, hi, I'm a Mac and I'm a PC. I think those were always brilliant because they were subtle ways of using this 3-step formula.
Yep.
Because they were pointing out every time, you can go through and watch them. They're still hilarious.
Yeah.
Because like you said, they provide that entertaining aspect. But on each particular one, they would highlight the one thing that was that in ways that PC was making life very difficult for their
like
customers.
The setup, just taking it out of the box.
Right. Yep.
Was a really good
was a
one.
real pain.
Yeah.
But then they would flip it to the alternative, and Mac's just this guy that we don't have to worry about that. We're already set up and ready to go. So it's like, here's this, but they did it and they tied it in such a way those were really good.
Yeah.
Really good ads.
And that's a great example of all these things. So
unfortunately they've drifted
Yeah, now they're
far from it.
Now they're doing Puffalump commercials.
Puffalump and Pixels.
I don't know what's going on over there. I have to give Tim a call.
Yeah.
So in this, like, I know I've said this before, but like, this is probably one of my favorite sections of copy from an ad in this entire book.
Yeah.
Like, it is really well done, and this is the part that I was teasing. That's like an English essay. So basically, what this ad does, and it's the spark plug ad versus what they're calling fire injector.
Yeah.
Right. So first of all, they gave it a new name, which we talked about in the last chapter, mechanization.
Right.
Give it a new name, or just name it. But there's so much little subtle stuff going on in here. I'm going to read just a little bit of it.
Sure.
But it says, so first of all, it says mechanics and engineers read this carefully. So usually you don't want an engineer reading your stuff carefully because they'll probably pick it apart, or a mechanic.
Will, yeah.
But they invited it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. It says, and for you mechanics and engineers, let me tell you why fire injection must give you these results. A spark plug jumps a spark of electricity across an air gap. This is the most wasteful and power-consuming way to get electricity from one place to another, and it limits the size of the spark. So they've pointed out the problem, the weakness, right? A fire injector fires on the surface of an electrical conductor. This is the most efficient way to get a big, powerful spark into your cylinder. On ordinary spark plugs, the air gap between the electrode and the firing point is always getting bigger because the electrode is always burning away.
Yeah.
Another weakness. This means you have misfiring, which means loss of power plus wasted gas plus raw gas to damage the cylinders and piston rings. On fire injectors, there is no air gap and no electrode to burn away. That means maximum gas explosion, which means full power, full economy, and no raw gas to wash away the oil protection from cylinders, walls, and pistons. So here's what I find really interesting about this is they don't just point out the weakness and then say we have a solution.
Yeah.
They go into detail on the solution. A lot of people would just say, but we fixed that, and then just kind of leave it there.
Yeah.
Whereas this ad does a really good job.
Yeah, they really do spend time to...
of going point by point. Okay, here's every point that's a weakness. Here's every point in the same kind of rhythm, the same kind of, a lot of the same words. They go exactly the opposite. So to me, the reason I said English essay is it's like an old school compare and contrast essay that you would do in English. You know, here's the it's not really a compare, but here's a problem. Here's the contrast. You know, weakness, solution, weakness, solution. So it's kind of like that compare and contrast. And they do go through and do this for. So they've got 1, 2, 3, 4 more sections where they do that. They talk about the spark plug, and then they talked about the fire injector. Talk about the spark plug, fire injector, spark plug, fire injector. Ordinary spark plugs, fire injector. So they go through it again. Yeah. And then they give a final piece. It's not even the final piece in the whole ad, but these are some of the reasons that the U.S. Air Force pays premium price for surface-supported injectors for their aircraft, and why you will ultimately find fire injectors in automobiles. So they throw in that last bit of proof.
Ultimately, yeah, exactly. You're going to find
that the Air Force uses these on fighter jets. It's like, well, if it's good enough for a fighter jet, it must be, good for my car.
Absolutely.
And then then Schwartz in the book, he goes through and he really breaks down some of the things that this ad is doing. And this is one of the things, and I've talked about this other book before, and this is not a book that we'll ever go through on the podcast because it's not that kind of book. But Schwartz's other book, The Brilliance Breakthrough, is a workbook style book that teaches you how to write, communicate, and persuade with words that are much more visual. Yeah. So he points that. So obviously he likes seeing that kind of stuff when he's looking at other copy too. Sure. So he uses, it says, he uses parallelism. He repeats words to contrast the inherent weakness of the plug with the inherent strength of the injector. For instance, a spark plug jumps a spark. A fire injector fires on whatever. Spark is a weak word. Fire is a much stronger visually word. And then he later intensifies this contrast of image by saying a spark plug gives you a thin, skimpy spark, A fire injector gives you a heavy,
It does.
powerful flame.
It's very powerful wording.
So this is all very
Visual.
subtle,
Yeah.
but your brain picks it up. Mm-hmm. And that is why a really well-crafted sales page, a really well-crafted presentation, TED Talk, whatever, will take the time to go find and craft these phrases
Sure.
when other people don't.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference, especially if it's anything that you're going to have that's that you can automate, whether it's a video that you're doing, a commercial. And you see this in infomercials all the time. Like they use these choppy phrases and they've worked to refine those phrases. And if you're doing sales presentations, I mean, you should put this kind of care into your presentations.
Yeah.
If you know that you've got a basic presentation, you should be looking for those phrases, looking for those power words, and then look for the weak words for your competition and all those. So I just find this particular ad and the writing of it is phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. It's fantastic. I mean, not to mention they're, getting into the details, especially for the market that they're targeting this ad towards. I mean, gearheads or mechanics, engineers, these people want to see, okay, I understand what you're saying, but how does that show me, prove to me, how does that work?
I mean, I think you could take this ad and go get, white label fire injectors, and you could do an infomercial and sell straight off his ad and make $1 million.
Right.
I mean, it's that powerful. You could do a quick video with that. It's a 2-minute video to go through that whole ad.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be really powerful. So, am I a geek that I get that excited about that ad?
No.
I mean,
I love him describing the difference between spark and fire, because you can visually see whenever you use spark plug, you're thinking, that's just a spark.
Yeah.
Fire seems that much stronger. I mean, much more reliable. You're thinking, it's
and that's such an overlooked. It'd be so easy to overlook that.
It would be,
right. That's why you need somebody that
it's
the
dedicated. Difference in words. Like, let's use this beer for instance. Thick, or what's another? It's a better term. I mean, using terminology to describe thick lager, robust. Something like that sounds even better in your description. But
what's Mark Twain's famous quote? He says the difference between the right word and the wrong word is the difference between lightning and lightning bug. Like it's a big.
He's exactly right.
That's a big difference.
Yeah,
and it's so true.
Yeah,
and it seems like this is hard. I mean, this is like really hard work, and this is why a lot of really good copywriters have made fortunes, because it's this kind of like between the lines almost work that people don't see, and when it's done well, you don't really even notice until you really start picking it apart.
Yeah.
So it's super, super powerful. There's another strategy. I mean, do you want to go into that? We have time, or do you want to go?
Yeah, we've got, let's say 5 minutes. We'll get in. Think we can do that?
Yeah. So this is a little bit more about when things aren't quite as clear. First, I want to know if you got any underlines there that jumped out at you for this one for us.
Not so much under the second strategy. Just kind of looking ahead. In this case, concentration copy should adopt a different structure, something that looks more like this. So he gets in. I guess we can maybe discuss this a little bit of this example ad that he's got here.
Okay.
What will happen when you switch to the new product? Here is such a structure for an ad selling a reducing pill, which sounds really funny.
Yeah, weight loss pill. I guess they couldn't say weight loss back then.
Let's first look at the negative copy. For years, doctors have known that ordinary reducing plans that you pay $5, $10, and even $15 for in stores are completely passive. So he's setting up with the negative, what you've been duped over the years, that they depend strictly on your own willpower, on your own ability to starve that fat off your body. All that, all that these ordinary reducing plans are able to give you for your $5, $10, and $15 are hunger appeasing products, pills, powders, liquids that do nothing more than swell up your stomach. It's just hard to imagine, that do nothing more than dull your hunger a little. But none of these products would do anything to actively help you lose weight, to take the strain off the starvation diet, to actually help you burn that ugly fat, oxidize that fat, melt it away. So what happened? If you're overweight, you struggled to do the job of reducing by yourself. You took your hunger appeasing pills religiously. You pushed away the foods you love, blah, blah, blah. In other words, you went down this road and it caused you nothing but pain, hunger. You were uncomfortable, all for the money that you were spending.
He draws out the whole, I mean, this is kind of the problem agitate type, the PAS, the problem agitate, without the solution yet that he gets into. So he's just really pointing out that, what they probably used as a selling point at one point, which was, hey, it'll fill you up so you won't feel hungry as long, right? But it doesn't actually, so you're just starving yourself, but it doesn't actually help burn the fat or he says, oxidize, melt away.
Right.
So he's actually kind of teasing, what his product is going to be doing.
Right.
Float fat right out of your body, from the earlier chapter, but he's hinting that that's what it's going to take, as opposed to, and he's got this whole idea of passive versus active. So, those products are passive. What I'm about to show you, and it's kind of implied here, is an active way to get rid of fat as opposed to passive.
Yep.
So, and then he gets in, so he goes through that, he redefines what those products are actually doing. Instead of that being a benefit, it's actually not a benefit.
Right.
And then he gets
cause you to be bloated.
So then it goes from the failure that he was just talking about of the other products to a promise. And then he says, and so you tried another passive plan and another, right? Which is, that's true in the weight loss industry. And then if you were like the men and women whose fantastic case history is reported by leading medical journals, perhaps you went to your doctor and asked him for an easy way out without torture and without sliding back. So, right, there's more that, like, he's turning the knife even deeper, right? Without torture. He could have used a lot of words there, but they picked torture.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people are afraid to go that heavy. And, when we were talking to Chris with the Facebook ads, you may not be able to do that on social media.
Yeah.
But you can certainly do it in a lot of other mediums still to this day.
Yeah. Pretty unlikely you'd get away with this on with the Facebook ads team.
You could use the same principle, though. You could talk about failure of most products. Yeah. And I think actually that would be a really good angle for social media, because people love to complain and be frustrated on social media. So you could use that frustration and that failure and then switch to the promise. So these doctors had the answer in a tiny gray pill and a common sense plan in their hands, so tiny that they could balance it on the tip of their little finger. So again, this is like, you can see that in your mind. You can see a guy in a white lab coat holding this little pill on the tip of his finger, right? It's like, that's
a Nobel Prize winner who's developed this. Yes.
And you can almost see the, the cover of the ad, the guy holding his little gray pill.
Yeah. With his safety glasses on.
Yeah. Perhaps the greatest weapon ever discovered against deadly excess fat. So it's a weapon against deadly fat.
Yeah.
Like, this is an enemy. This isn't just fat. This is an enemy. It was a miraculous compound called lecithin, brand new, whose amazing fat dissolving properties had been discovered by a Nobel Prize winner, the co-discoverer of insulin. Oh, wow. It must be important. Like, this must
kind of
save
sounds
lives.
like it. Yeah.
It's like, you can see how he's building in this and really making it strong. And it's not just, hey, we've got a new way to lose weight. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Because this product was perfectly safe and easy to take, and as easy to take as an aspirin, there's something that's widely accepted by everybody. Many had used it themselves when they wanted to lose weight. They were not given any starvation diets. They never experienced a single hungry moment. They reported in case after case that they felt more pep, more energy, more youth and vitality than they'd ever known in years. And then day after day, faster and easier and safer. I mean, that's a nice little rhythm there. And then day after day, faster and easier and safer. Now, that's actually not really proper grammar to have those three ands like in a row.
Right.
But you start getting that.
Sure.
You remember in high school, did you ever read Beowulf?
Yeah, sure did.
There's, from an English standpoint, there's something called iambic pentameter, where you have that beat. There's like a 5-count beat to the each stanza. You know, it's kind of what this is. It gives you in a rhythm, and it's kind of a hypnotic.
Yeah.
Joe Vitale would say this is like a hypnotic copy. Safer than they ever known before, the ugly excess fat around their bodies melted away. While they were eating 3 delicious meals a day, they were shedding as much as 5 pounds a week, while they were feasting on mouth-watering steaks.
So they are. They're not having to starve themselves. They actually get to enjoy. Because contrast,
because of lecithin.
Yeah.
You know, that little discovery. So,
yep.
And so on and so on. And then it gets back into intensification. It does some other stuff. But, you know, this is all just, it's kind of pointing out this was not a particular competitor. It was just, you know, it was the old way doesn't work.
Yeah.
Here's the new way.
Right.
So it's like, it's that compare and contrast.
And what was wrong with the old way, describing the pain points, the frustrations, the spending money on, you know, time and time again on things that only gave you bad results, or, you know, gave you, at the worst part of it, gave you bloating.
Yeah.
You know, made you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Pain, gave you hunger pains.
Yeah. And then he in the last page of this chapter, he talks about, you know, that's the kind of the long form of it, but you could actually do this in one sentence. Yeah. And you actually read this headline in the last episode, but so you could say the same thing in one sentence.
Yeah.
Not the same thing because it's a different topic, but shrinks hemorrhoids without surgery.
Yeah.
So this is this was a very famous headline back in its day, and this is where we get the copy formula that a lot of people use, not just this one, but of the how to get X without Y. Yeah. You've seen that, you know, if you've done a lot of study in marketing, you've probably seen that headline formula around. You know, so that's one thing you can use. So it's that compare and contrast again. Right. You can have this without this. Yep. And you can have the new thing, or you can have what you want without the old thing. Yep. Which then again implies that there's a new way. So, so I think that's it. That's it on
clean your carpets without running a vacuum.
There you go. Roomba.
There you go.
Yeah. You know, or, you know, clean your carpets without missing your kid's soccer game. Yeah. You know, or, I mean, there's a million different ways you can go. Yeah. And that's why it works so well, because it's showing that pain in one sentence. You can identify it. Cool. So that is the word on the final word on concentration. That was chapter 12. We're going to be going through the 7th principles next week, and then we're kind of wrapping up after that. Yeah. So the next 2 episodes we'll wrap this book up, and then we'll get into get back to some modern day stuff. But I've really enjoyed going through this.
I have too,
and I'm excited to do the last technique, which is camouflage.
Yeah, to me, this has been going through this book the way we have, you know, and even sharing it through the podcast, I think has been just, I mean, a much better way to really, because we both mention, you know, I know you mentioned prior to it, this is a book that you don't skim read through. Yeah. This is an in-depth book, and that you spend time. And I think, you know, for us, but also for a lot of our listeners, us just talking about it, going through each section and talking about it, has been beneficial for a lot of people, because, you know, there's so much to cover in this. Yeah. But being able to flush it out chapter by chapter, going each episode and covering maybe 1 or 2 chapters, I think has really helped to kind of, you know, reduce this to bite-sized chunks. You know, the old Brian Tracy saying, yeah, how do you eat an elephant? Yeah. 1 chapter at a time.
Yeah, and you have to with this. Yeah. You'll never sit down and just read through this book. Right. And I know a lot of guys that have this on their desk, and it's, you know, tattered and torn and marked, and you know, and it does take some work, like Chris mentioned on our last episode. It takes some work to slow down and kind of figure out how to use it in today's, because the examples are old.
Yeah.
And you can't just whip out, like, these aren't formulas or templates. These are principles.
Yeah.
That you have to kind of dig for and find out what works today. So,
although that spark plug ad could be
that
modified, that would work.
Yeah. And that's just,
that's good.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of, there was a spark plug for a while that had the 2 prongs, you know, I guess they're still around, but I don't do that kind of stuff anymore to my car.
Sure.
Like, you just don't have to mess with that stuff as much, but, for a certain market, you know, for people that are restoring cars and all that kind of stuff, you know, there's a whole product right there for somebody out there who wants a physical products business on Amazon. Yeah. You know, you could,
no doubt. You
could launch that quick. So yeah, we've got 2 more chapters, and then I think we're basically done. And I don't know what we're going to talk about next. Maybe we need some write-in suggestions.
Yeah. So if
we've both got bookshelves full of stuff.
Oh yeah, it's not hard to come up with something. But yeah, if you have something in mind you would like us to touch on, well, certainly you're open to anything that you have suggestions with. Plus, you can find us again, persuasionbythepint.com, to leave comments. And if you're not subscribed to our podcast, shame on you. And go to either Stitcher Radio, iTunes, or one of those places. Click the subscribe so you'll have it each and every week downloaded. So, been fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fun. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening. As always, take care.
Take care.